look like one former NBA referee has took the gloves off in this gambling scandal. He's exposing everybody. Guys, for this one here,
everyone thinks they understand the WNBA. The inspiring stories, the record-breaking viewership, the sleek marketing campaigns that present it as a beacon of progress in professional sports. On the surface, it's a story of growth, empowerment, and history in the making. But behind that glittering image, whispers have been spreading. Stories of manipulation, intimidation, and corruption that sound more like something out of a corporate thriller than a sports league. Insiders are beginning to break their silence, and what they're describing could completely shatter the league's carefully crafted reputation. Because while fans are busy celebrating highlight reels and sponsorship deals, some referees and officials claim there's a darker game being played, one that has nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with control. This isn't just about bad calls or favoritism. It's about a system that may have been quietly bending the rules to shape outcomes, protect profits, and manage narratives, all while pretending everything is fair. And now, the cracks in that perfect illusion are finally starting to show.
Whistleblowers is coming out of the woodwork. Now, we know Adam Silver was pressed hard this past weekend whenever he was out at games, making an appearance, and they wasted no time at all getting him pretty much putting the camera in his face.
The first signs of trouble didn't come from fans or journalists. It came from within. Former referees, longtime insiders, and even a few current staffers began quietly reaching out to reporters, hinting that something inside the WNBA wasn't right. These weren't disgruntled ex-employees looking for attention. They were people who had spent years in the league, people who understood its inner workings better than anyone else. They described a culture where unspoken expectations replaced the official rulebook, and where integrity often took a back seat to image management. One former referee, speaking under the condition of anonymity, described how pressure from league executives would subtly shape games. The instructions were never written down, but the message was clear. Certain players and certain teams were to be protected. Another official recalled pre-game meetings where narratives, not strategies, were discussed. They said, "We knew what the league wanted to see. It wasn't about fairness, it was about optics." As these accounts began to stack up, it became impossible to dismiss them as isolated frustrations. Even those outside the WNBA started paying attention. When NBA Commissioner Adam Silver was asked about the growing controversy, his response felt measured, almost cautious, as if he knew more than he could say. Reporters sensed it too. Something was brewing, and for the first time, the WNBA's tightly controlled image was starting to slip. The whispers were getting louder, and the cracks in the league's polished exterior were becoming impossible to ignore. What the referees began revealing next made even seasoned insiders uneasy.
We hear you now. There he is. So, Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing terrific. Good morning, guys.
Fantastic.
Morning.
Fantastic. Appreciate you for making the time. So what do you think about what's going on here?
You know, I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. I think when you talk about arrests being made by the FBI, I think the guys that are arrested are going to sit down and, be scared to death with what they're facing, and they're going to start to cooperate, and they're going to tell the FBI everything they know, and this thing is going to spread like wildfire, and you're going to...
They weren't talking about blatant game fixing or envelope under the table scandals. This was something far more subtle and in many ways more dangerous. According to multiple officials, the WNBA had developed what they quietly called the guided whistle. It wasn't about deciding who wins or loses outright. It was about steering the game in the direction the league wanted it to go. Officials described moments where they were encouraged to manage momentum, to let certain players play more physically, or to keep a star on the floor when foul trouble might have changed the entire outcome. They said it was framed as maintaining the flow of the game, or keeping the product entertaining. But underneath those polished phrases, it was clear what was really happening. Games were being subtly shaped to serve storylines, not competition. One whistleblower put it bluntly, "You don't need to fix a game to influence it. All you have to do is choose when to blow the whistle and when to stay silent." A few key moments, a few ignored fouls, and suddenly a matchup that should have gone one way started to drift another. It wasn't a conspiracy in the classic sense. It was an artfully controlled narrative hidden in plain sight. Referees who questioned this system found themselves left out of key assignments, demoted without explanation, or handed impossible schedules that effectively pushed them out. Yet the message was consistent: obey the unwritten rules, or your career quietly disappears. The deeper the revelations went, the clearer it became. This wasn't a few rogue officials, it was an organized method of control, operating under the radar for years. And if that's true, it means the fairness of the league itself may have been an illusion all along. For referees inside the WNBA, the real game wasn't played on the court, it was fought behind closed doors. The moment someone questioned the system, the subtle punishment would begin. Suddenly, reliable referees stopped getting prime assignments. Their travel schedules were quietly slashed, their evaluations dipped without reason, and their names disappeared from playoff rotations. No one ever said the words outright, but everyone understood what was happening. Fall in line or fall out of favor. Officials began describing a workplace fueled by silent fear. During pre-game meetings, there were glances exchanged, quick, nervous looks between those who knew what was being asked of them but didn't dare say it aloud. One veteran referee admitted that many of them would rather call questionable plays than risk being blacklisted. You could have a perfect record one week and be written off the next, all because you made the wrong call on the wrong player. That's how control works here. It's invisible, but absolute. The fear didn't stop with referees. Coaches, staff, and even team executives began noticing the same pressure trickling down. A coach might get a private reminder about which players the league wanted highlighted that night. A communications manager might be told to soften certain post-game comments. The result was a culture where everyone knew the boundaries but pretended not to. The few who tried to resist were swiftly isolated, their careers fading into quiet obscurity.
And yet, amid that silence, something started to shift. A few brave voices decided they'd had enough. Enough of the manipulation, enough of the threats, enough of pretending the league's version of integrity was anything more than PR spin. Their stories would soon ignite the fire that exposed everything. But before that happened, the WNBA's most promising new star would become the symbol of everything wrong with the system. If there was ever a moment when the league's fragile illusion began to unravel, it was with Caitlin Clark. On paper, she was the WNBA's golden ticket, a once-in-a-generation player who brought record crowds, fresh sponsors, and millions of new eyes to the game. But behind that explosion of attention came something darker, a pattern of officiating that fans couldn't ignore and players quietly questioned. Every bump, shove, and elbow she took seemed to go uncalled. Meanwhile, the smallest defensive touch on her end drew a whistle faster than anyone could blink. At first, fans thought it was coincidence, maybe rookie treatment, maybe nerves from referees under pressure. But as the season wore on, the inconsistency became impossible to explain away. Clips circulated online, slow-motion breakdowns showed blatant missed fouls, and even neutral commentators began to ask out loud, "What's going on here?" That's when whispers from inside the league started matching what fans were seeing. According to several officials, Clark's name was quietly placed in an unprotected category. Referees were told to let the game flow when she was targeted physically, to avoid appearing biased toward the league's most marketable star. The logic was twisted but deliberate. League insiders say leadership feared being accused of favoritism, so they overcorrected, turning the face of women's basketball into a target. Others believe it was even more calculated, that the controversy itself drove attention, headlines, and ratings. After all, nothing sells like conflict, and the more bruises Clark collected, the more viral the league became.
But the consequences went far beyond public perception. Teammates began to worry about her safety, opposing players were confused about what counted as a foul anymore, and fans started to question whether fairness even existed on the court. It was the perfect storm, an emblem of everything the referees had been warning about for years. Quiet manipulation disguised as game management. Control dressed up as competition. When the Wall Street Journal and other major outlets began investigating Clark's treatment, the story leapt from rumor to national spotlight. The WNBA could no longer hide behind polished PR statements. What had started as whispers from officials was now a full-blown credibility crisis, and the league's leadership was running out of places to hide. When the storm finally reached the league office, all eyes turned to Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. To the public, she was the face of the WNBA's modern success story, a corporate leader who had elevated the league's brand, negotiated bigger media deals, and attracted major sponsors. But behind that explosion of attention, her leadership had a very different reputation. Many described her as detached, more concerned with optics and revenue charts than with the growing unrest simmering beneath the surface. When reporters pressed her about officiating controversies or rumors of internal pressure, her responses were polished to perfection, vague reassurances about continuous improvement, respecting the process, and supporting our officials. They sounded professional. They also said nothing. Behind those safe statements, officials and staff claimed that real concerns were being buried. Multiple sources alleged that reports about inconsistent officiating, intimidation, and even potential conflicts of interest never made it past upper management. Quote, "If it threatened the brand, it got quietly filed away," said one former employee. Quote, "You don't fix the problem, you reframe it." End quote. That approach might have worked for quarterly reports and sponsor meetings, but it was disastrous for a sports league built on trust. As the controversy deepened, Engelbert's corporate instincts only made things worse. Instead of addressing the claims head-on, she doubled down on talking points about record viewership and unprecedented growth. To angry fans, it felt like gaslighting. To insiders, it confirmed what they already suspected, that maintaining the illusion of success mattered more than the truth. Even veteran players began to lose patience. Some privately questioned whether Engelbert's background in business rather than basketball made her ill-equipped to handle the soul of the sport. Under her watch, the WNBA had gained money and momentum, but lost credibility. The one thing no league can afford to compromise. And as public trust eroded, those on the inside began to wonder whether this leadership could survive the reckoning that was clearly on its way. The cracks weren't just visible anymore, they were spreading fast. Follow the money and the truth starts to come into focus. Beneath all the talk about fairness and empowerment, the WNBA has quietly built a financial ecosystem where influence and favoritism appear to walk in hand. Referees and league insiders have claimed that not all teams are treated equally, and the pattern, they say, traces directly back to market size and sponsor power. Big market franchises with high-profile ownership groups often get the benefit of the doubt, while smaller teams are left fighting uphill battles before the ball even tips off. It's not about skill or preparation, it's about business priorities disguised as basketball outcomes. Several officials described moments that blurred the line between competition and marketing strategy. Calls that could shift a game's momentum mysteriously seemed to favor teams tied to major television deals or corporate partners. Star players with lucrative endorsement contracts found themselves shielded by a quieter whistle, while lesser-known athletes were called for the same contact that went ignored on the other end. "You start realizing it's not a coincidence," said one insider. "It's a business model." The ties between the league office and its corporate backers run deep, and that connection has bred suspicion about conflicts of interest. Kathy Engelbert's background at Deloitte, a company known for its focus on metrics, branding, and profit, has shaped her management style in unmistakable ways. Growth, expansion, and sponsorships became the league's measuring sticks for success. But that business-first mindset left something essential behind: competitive integrity. When image becomes more important than fairness, corruption doesn't need to be explicit, it's baked into the system. Then came the Wall Street Journal investigation. Their report didn't just mention officiating inconsistencies, it alleged potential civil rights violations related to Caitlin Clark's treatment and the league's handling of internal complaints. For a respected publication to publish something that serious meant they had done their homework. The WNBA's response? A short, sanitized statement that read more like corporate damage control than accountability. No specifics, no commitment to change, just another attempt to wait out the news cycle. But this time, silence didn't make the problem go away. Sponsors began quietly asking questions. Broadcasters wanted reassurances that what they were airing was still legitimate competition. Fans started tracking fouls and calls themselves, building charts that painted a pattern the league couldn't ignore. The financial machine that had fueled the WNBA's rise was now exposing the cracks in its foundation. What began as whispers of unfairness was starting to look like a rigged system operating in plain sight, and all trails led straight to the people profiting the most from keeping it that way. When money and influence intertwine, gambling is never far behind. And for the WNBA, that connection may be its most dangerous secret yet. As sports betting exploded across the U.S., the league eagerly joined the gold rush, partnering with major sports books and promoting official odds during broadcasts. It was pitched as harmless fan engagement, a way to modernize and grow the sport. But behind the upbeat press releases, some insiders started to worry that the league was opening a door it couldn't close. Referees noticed it first. Calls that subtly shaped point spreads drew attention, not from fans, but from betting analytics accounts tracking suspicious patterns. A few games ended with last-second whistles or non-calls that conveniently affected betting lines. None of it was enough to prove corruption, but the coincidences piled up fast. "We were told not to talk about gambling," said one former official, "but we all saw how certain calls changed the numbers. You can't unsee that." Then came the whispers about external influence. Rumors circulated that some league insiders were too cozy with sportsbook representatives, attending private events and networking sessions that blurred professional boundaries. While there's no concrete evidence of match fixing, even the perception of influence can destroy trust, and that's exactly what started happening. Fans began questioning whether every foul, every non-call, every point was pure competition or something nudged by invisible hands. At the center of it all loomed NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. On paper, the WNBA operates independently, but Silver's role as the figurehead of both leagues gives him enormous behind-the-scenes influence. Insiders suggest he's been quietly steering the WNBA's expansion strategy, pushing for aggressive monetization through gambling partnerships. It's a strategy that made the NBA billions, but it also blurred ethical lines, and now those same gray areas have seeped into the women's game. Publicly, Silver presents himself as a reformer, the calm, calculated leader guiding basketball into the future. But his silence on the WNBA's officiating and gambling controversies has raised eyebrows. Some believe he's deliberately keeping his distance to avoid liability, while others think he's orchestrating the league's direction from the shadows, ensuring the WNBA follows the NBA's playbook no matter the cost. Either way, the implications are chilling. The more gambling embeds itself into the sport, the easier it becomes to manipulate narratives without anyone noticing. A missed foul here, a quiet whistle there, and millions of dollars shift hands legally. And if the same corporate web connects the referees, the league, and the betting markets, then the WNBA's biggest threat isn't bad press or a viral controversy. It's the slow, silent erosion of trust in the game itself. By the time the controversies reached a boiling point, the league's biggest problem wasn't just the referees or leadership, it was trust. Fans, once electrified by the WNBA's rise, began watching games with suspicion instead of excitement. Every questionable call sparked outrage online, every missed foul became evidence of bias, and every highlight was dissected frame by frame for signs of manipulation. What used to be passion turned into paranoia. "You can feel it in the arenas," said one broadcaster. "The energy isn't joy anymore, it's doubt." Social media made it impossible to hide. Clips of unfair officiating were slowed down, analyzed, and shared millions of times. Comment sections filled with fans who once defended the league, now openly questioning its legitimacy. The hashtag #RiggedWNBA started trending, and what used to be a small niche of conspiracy-minded fans turned into a mainstream movement. Even loyal supporters, those who had followed the league since its earliest days, admitted that something felt off. When belief breaks, it doesn't shatter all at once. It erodes piece by piece.
Inside locker rooms, the mood wasn't much better. Players started losing faith that the league had their backs. Some veterans privately vented that they were tired of feeling like pawns in someone else's PR game. "We're out there putting our bodies on the line," one player said, "and the league treats us like characters in a scripted show." Younger players watched how stars like Caitlin Clark were treated and wondered if fairness was even possible anymore, or if the only way to succeed was to fit the narrative the league wanted to sell. Broadcasters, too, found themselves trapped between loyalty and honesty. Many networks have deep financial partnerships with the league, but on-air commentators couldn't ignore the controversies forever. Some began cautiously acknowledging fan frustrations, hinting at inconsistencies or growing tension between players and officials. It was a delicate dance. Say too much and risk losing access. Say too little and lose credibility. For journalists, it became an impossible balancing act. The WNBA's public image, once built on empowerment, authenticity, and unity, was fracturing under the weight of its own contradictions. Fans no longer knew who to believe. Players no longer trusted the officials. Broadcasters no longer trusted the league's messaging. And as the cracks widened, one question began echoing louder than ever before. If the game itself can't be trusted, what's left to believe in? Every scandal eventually reaches a crossroads, and for the WNBA, that moment has arrived. The league stands between two futures, one where it finally faces the truth and rebuilds its credibility from the ground up, another where it doubles down on damage control until the entire foundation caves in. The choice isn't about saving face anymore, it's about survival. The only way forward is transparency. That means opening officiating records, auditing leadership decisions, and confronting the quiet culture of control that's poisoned trust for years. Fans don't need perfection, they need honesty. The moment the league stops pretending and starts listening, the healing can begin. But that kind of reform takes courage, and right now, courage is in short supply. Insiders say there are already quiet conversations about restructuring leadership, even whispers about outside oversight from independent sports ethics boards. Sponsors are pushing for it too, not because of morality, but because chaos threatens profits. The irony is brutal. The same financial forces that drove the league's manipulation might now be the only reason it's forced to change. For players, this reckoning could be a turning point. They've carried the league's reputation on their shoulders, building its fan base, driving its visibility, and proving that women's basketball belongs in the global spotlight. If they unite and demand accountability, real change becomes possible. But if they stay silent, out of fear, loyalty, or exhaustion, the system will quietly reset itself, and the same games will keep being played both on and off the court. The fans are watching closer than ever. They're tired of vague statements and ongoing reviews. They want truth, transparency, and a league that values integrity over illusion. Whether the WNBA answers that call or collapses under the weight of its own deception will define its legacy for generations. Because once trust is gone, it's not just a sport at risk, it's the soul of the game itself.